Do I think companies should address the murder of Ahmaud Arbery? This isn't a clear yes or no for me. This is more of a how and why, right? And so I'd start off by saying if you're thinking about addressing it through a top down email or a Slack message or an emergency town hall or sloppily thrown together focus and or affinity groups, I'd say don't bother, right? Because they can come across really inauthentic and random. And in my experience, having experienced those types of things where they came across inauthentic to me, I also find that for people who aren't automatically triggered by these types of issues, folks who don't connect with the victims, it builds resistance in them, and so they shut down and feel like they're being forced to engage. And I feel like we miss out on opportunities to build true allyship and have conversations. So the how and why companies should address the murder of Ahmaud Arbery is because there's data to back it up that this is a real issue in our society. And there's a real cultural diversity inclusion issue going on here. And that data is on that data shows how Black people in this country are disproportionately affected by lynchings, right? I'll just sum it up with the word lynchings, but how unarmed Black folks are essentially hunted down and murdered, right? And we're finding and we're hearing about more and more times that this is happening when they're doing regular things, right? Sleeping in their homes, walking home from a corner store, jogging in a neighborhood, even like jogging and going to check out a property that's being built. I don't know how many times I've like walked into like abandoned areas because I'm nosy, right? Because I'm being a human. And, just having to be fearful that you'll lose your life because of it. And whether that's at the hands of vigilante citizens or police, it's a problem. And there are numbers to show that it's a problem. And I think those numbers help prevent this, talking about a real issue that affects people and should honestly affect everyone, but it prevents it from becoming this like this one-off, random, thoughtless thing. Like, I think it'd be weird if companies were like picking and choosing crimes to report out on, right? And not talking about how there's a larger overarching issue behind what they decided to talk about. So that's a part of the why. The other thing is, I think we need to normalize conversations around culture, diversity, and inclusion, especially when they involve violence against a group of people. And the way you normalize that is by, and so this is getting into the how, creating something that you do regularly, like a newsletter, that covers these types of issues. And I say this because I've seen, over the last couple of days, people treating this as like this is a Black issue. It's not a Black issue alone. Like, you should be affected by your fellow human being gunned down, right? Because I'm sure you jog or somebody that jogs. And so that distancing that happens when we think, oh, we should only talk about this if we have Black people on staff. Like, no, you should be talking about it even if your staff isn't diverse. And if your staff isn't diverse, that's another problem. And so everyone should be talking about it. And so we need to normalize it. So getting more into that how, I do believe that key people should be the ones to take on the responsibility for facilitating this conversation. And those folks are the culture folks, the HR folks, the diversity and inclusion folks at your company. And they should consider having, either a daily, weekly, biweekly, monthly newsletter where they report out on news and issues and updates that affect the work that they are responsible for doing at your company, right? So going back to the data, this is something that numbers back up is an issue. Talk about it. It's news that you should be paying attention to if you say that you value diversity, inclusion, and culture. And then, of course, there might be employees that you have that do feel triggered and traumatized, and you want to acknowledge that. And so, I'd just add on, having that flexibility or that malleability to recognize that, right? If there are people who feel disproportionately affected. And in addition to having something like a newsletter to normalize the conversations, then that's the time to like send out a survey and say, hey, should we have a small conversation, a meeting about this to unpack this further and see how people are feeling and get that feedback. So those are my thoughts.